Hey guys, what's going on? I got my 03 Cobra here, and today I'll be doing a coolant flush. This process will be the same for all 03, 04 Cobras. The only place it'll differ is whether you have green or gold coolant. There's a bunch of forums that talk about that online, but just to make it simple, you can drain out the coolant that you have now and see what you have. And another way to find that out is I've heard that pre-August of 02 production Terminators had green, everything after had yellow. Mine was produced in May of 02, and from seeing inside the reservoir, I do have green coolant. So today I'm going to go ahead and flush this out, or I'm going to drain it out from the radiator and the reservoir by going under the car and removing the lower radiator hose and the upper hose from the thermostat housing. That'll drain about half of the fluid that's in the vehicle. I'm going to top it back off with distilled water and a cleaning solution from Prestone. I'm going to run the car for about a couple days through a bunch of heat cycles, and then I'll do that a couple times without the cleaning solution. So I'll drain it again, fill it with distilled water, drain it again, fill it with distilled water, and I'll do that until the fluid that's coming out of the radiator is clear. At that point, whatever's left in the engine block should just be distilled water. I'll go ahead and top off the car with straight up concentrated coolant. So this is going to be a pretty easy process, and I'm not going to have to worry about burping out any air bubbles or anything because I'll be using a vacuum filler tool. They're pretty worth it because they make the job a lot easier and faster, and they don't cost much. I got mine for about 60 bucks on Amazon. You could probably get one for less than 50 at Harbor Freight. They range anywhere from 50 bucks to a few hundred. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and then I'll get back and show you guys where I'm at, what I'm doing, and I'll try my best to be as descriptive as I can throughout the process. So right now I'm laying under the car on the driver's side. Here's the driver's side wheel. Pretty much right behind it, there's the thermostat housing. You could remove these two bolts and just split that and let it pour out from there. This is the lower radiator hose. I'm going to start by removing that and let as much pour out of there as I can. And then I'll remove this one right here. That's the upper radiator hose. And I'll do the same thing. This is a solid time to go ahead and switch out your thermostat for like 170 degree thermostat. If I'm correct, I believe the stock ones are 180 degree. That would be useful depending on the climate you're in. I'm in the Midwest where it gets pretty cold and it gets pretty hot. So, and I also haven't had any issues with overheating, so I'm going to stick with this one. If you have overheating issues, it might be a good idea to swap out the thermostat. It's only a $60 or $70 piece for the cooler one. So I'm going to go ahead and get those hoses off, and then I'll show you guys how much liquid comes out into this container right here. Yeah, like I was saying, I was going to remove the lower hose and the upper hose, but getting this lower hose off is just a pain, as I found. So I went ahead and removed those two bolts, and I'm separating the thermostat housing. I'm going to actually pull it apart, let it flow out full force, but I want to kind of let it drip out a little bit first to prevent making as much of a mess as possible, because as you can tell, it definitely splatters around. No, this was not gold coolant. This is just very dirty green coolant. This should have been done a long time ago, but hey, better late than never. Stay on top of your stuff. I'll get back to you guys as soon as this is all done. Here I'm laying at the front of the car. I disconnected that, and the thermostat sits on this end, so that poured all the fluid out from the radiator through that lower hose, and then I disconnected the upper hose so I don't have to pull the actual thermostat out. I looked at the O-ring, it looks fine. I don't want to mess with pulling it out and putting it back in and everything. There's not a lot of space there anyways, it doesn't want to split, whatever. I removed this hose, and this is all the fluid I got out. That little gold line you see is about 3 gallons. And I'm about halfway there, so I'm a little bit more than halfway there, I would say, so that's about 2 gallons right there. So at this point I'm just going to go ahead and close all this off, and I'm going to go ahead and set up the vacuum fill tool, and I'll show you how that works. So at this point there should still be about 2 gallons of this in the engine block. It's disgusting, but it's going to be real nice and clean when we're all done. At this point I should be setting up the vacuum tool and pulling any air out and filling in the cleaner and the distilled water, but my reservoir is disgusting, so I removed it to clean it. I'm going to take it in the house and clean it. If you want to know how to remove it, it's just 1, 2, 3 bolts. This little hose, or 3 nuts I should say, here they are. This little hose connects to the top, and there is another hose underneath. Pretty easy to get off. There's that disgusting coolant. Here is my reservoir, nice and disgusting. Just to show you guys really quickly this vacuum tool. Here it is from OEM Tools. Real simple. On it right now, there's a bunch of little adapters. On it is the, I believe, 40mm one. You put it on and then you twist this tight essentially, and what that does is kind of expands, and then you guys will see shortly, but you connect a venturi valve right there, turn on the air, it sucks all the air out. You then shut that off. Once it gets to full pressure, the needle will stop moving, it'll stabilize, and then you go ahead and hit this, and it will use this hose right here to suck in any coolant. Real simple. You'll see how that works in a moment. There's the venturi valve I'm talking about. Your compressor needs to be able to go, I would say, at least to 90 psi, so fairly easy for any compressor. But I'm gonna go clean that reservoir and then I'll be back. All right, so I don't know if it's really hard to hear me right now, but I'm gonna go ahead and shut this off. So you just gotta get the air hose connected through the venturi valve. Here's the line that's gonna let the air escape. This line is to pull your coolant in later. Once that needle kind of stops, you're good to shut off the air. Now it doesn't want to focus, of course. So I'm at like 23. Leave this alone for a couple minutes and see if it's losing pressure anywhere, or if it's losing any air. If it is, you probably have a leak somewhere. But also, if you didn't correctly seat this, it could be leaking air from there. So I'm gonna leave it alone for a couple minutes, and in the meantime I'm gonna go ahead and get my coolant, or my distilled water and cleaner, into a bucket so I can suck it into the system. Alright, so it held pressure at 23, which is as high as it went for me. And with the venturi valve and this still open, I slightly opened this just to fill the line with coolant so it doesn't take any air in. And then you shut this off first, then shut this off. When you start it, same opposite. You turn this on first, then this, so you don't feed any air into the system. So it's holding at 23. I'm going to go ahead and open this. You want to make sure this hose is at the bottom of this bucket. Tilt it if you got to. You don't want it taking any air in. So I'm going to rest this kind of on my foot so it's at an angle, and then I'm going to open this. It'll take all the air in. I'll show you guys that in a second. Alright, so I said I'm going to open this so it takes all the air in. I meant so it takes all the liquid in, but I'm going to go ahead and open this. Once I open it, it's going to start taking in coolant, or well, in this case, distilled water. And I'm going to stop recording for a moment so I can make sure I don't overdo it and get any air into the system or anything like that, because obviously that would be exactly the opposite of what we're trying to do here. So you open this, you'll see that gauge starts to go down and it starts to suck the water in. So if you have an expansion tank with like a higher part, I would shut this off right before it gets to 0. Sorry, that was the air compressor. I'm sorry if it was hard to hear. But right before this gets to 0, I would shut this so you don't have coolant filling all up in there and then it overflows out of there. If you filled too much, suck it out with like a turkey baster. If you didn't fill enough, literally just top it off. I'm going to go ahead and shut this camera off and I'll show you momentarily. But what it's going to do is these hoses are going to go ahead and start plumping back up. I'll get back to you guys in a second. Alright, so sorry for being so rushed throughout this, but kind of just being by myself makes it a little difficult to record and do this, and I'm just trying to make this as informational as possible. So while using this, once it hits 0, as it did, it pretty much stops taking in any liquid. So you see there's that much left in there, the line's still full of liquid. So maybe better to have your bucket that you're using to fill the new liquid in more full than you need, to alleviate the risk of taking any air. At this point I can just go ahead and remove this. I'm going to do that momentarily. But as you can see, the lines have plumped back up. I looked at the ones underneath earlier. They were also flat, and now they're plumped up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and then I'll show you how full that is. There it is. You can, I don't know, there you go. You can kind of see the water's pretty much up to the top. This is the cooling system cleaner I used from Prestone. This one bottle treats about 3 gallons, and since our system has about 4 gallons, I used this whole bottle plus like a third of another one. The other 2/3 I used when I had this reservoir out. I just kind of put it in there and like shook it up and stuff. I doubt it did anything, but it was going to go in the garbage anyways, so I figured might as well. As you can see, the hoses are all back to being plumped up. Now I just got to grab the cap. Boom. and put it back on. And then I'm gonna go ahead, like I said, and drive the car for the next couple days. And then we'll see. I'll flush it after that. I'll check back with you guys. I'm sure it's gonna be still pretty dirty. I only went through 2 gallons of distilled water, so that was like less than $2.50. And a bottle of this, which was like $5 roughly, 2 bottles, $10. So I've spent so far like less than $15, and I still have, you know, I mean, I'm starting this flush process. I'm probably going to go through another anywhere from 4, maybe 6 more gallons of distilled water, and then I still have to add the 2 gallons of coolant. It sounds maybe a little extra, but to be honest, I want this to be as clean as possible. It's not, it takes a little bit longer doing it this way, but it's not like you're doing this very frequently. I don't drive this car too often. I mean, I've had it for 6 years. It only has about it has less than 17,000 miles on it, so nothing I'm too worried about. The cost of the tool being about $70, that's going to pay for itself with how much easier it made the job. So right now, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and drive this thing. I might go for a little drive today. It's still pretty decent out. I'll drive it over the course of the next couple days. Let's see, maybe I'll drive it for a couple hours today, and then a little bit tomorrow morning, depending on the weather. I'm supposed to get some thunderstorms here, so we'll see. And then maybe I'll drain this out tomorrow, and we'll go from there. So once I get to that step, I'll show you guys that. All right, it's the next day. Well, I got a lot more driving in yesterday than I thought I would. It ended up not storming, so I'm gonna go through this whole thing again. I got the car up on jacks, as you can see. Yes, I made a bit of a mess. I'm gonna go ahead and actually pull the thermostat out so I don't have to do any driving. So in between flushes, I'm gonna flush this out, close everything off with the thermostat out, fill with distilled water, run the car for 15 minutes, let everything run through, flush, fill, flush, fill. I'm gonna keep on doing that over and over again until what's coming out is completely clear. I'll show you guys at every step what comes out briefly, but it's pretty much the same as what I did yesterday. So I'm just gonna do this real quick and then I'll show you guys. All right guys, so it's 2 days later from the original drain. And I said I'd get back to you guys after I made some progress, but I'm having some issues. The first couple times I drained and then vacuumed and filled, I was able to hold pressure at 23 PSI. The last couple times I wasn't able to. I did get the coolant a heck of a lot cleaner. That's where we started over there in the corner, very muddy brown water, and that's where we're at now. That's 8 flushes later. I don't know why it's taken so much. I mean, this car is 21 years old, but it's only got 17,000 miles on it. Granted, it's done a lot of sitting, so that could be a big cause of it. I also don't know if the old owner mixed coolants, which is why I'm really adamant on flushing it. So I'm having some issues now with it holding pressure. I don't have any leaks anywhere that I can see. I'm ruling out a head gasket being blown because I've never had problems. I've never had overheating issues or anything like that. I don't see any signs of anything getting into the oil. Granted, the way these heads are built, the water that's in the system could be escaping through a head gasket and just burning off and not getting into oil. If it was getting into oil, it would be more of a chance of a cracked head or something. But either way, I'm not seeing any signs in the oil. I'm not getting any white smoke or anything like that, so I'm ruling out a head gasket. It could be a very small leak somewhere. It's very possible. I've heard that these reservoirs are really weak on their seams, but I'm not seeing any leaking. Maybe it's just enough to let some air get out. I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm going to go ahead and fill and burp the system the old school way. I'm going to give up on that vacuum method for now, just because this is a tried and true method for me. It works. I'm going to see if I can get the car to just behave normally. Once I add coolant to it, I'm probably going to flush it with some water a few more times. But I'm going to see if I can get it to act normal, not overheat, anything like that. And then I'll probably pressure test it. And I'll let you guys know what happens there. So what I'm doing right now is bleeding it pretty much the old school way. Radiator is empty. So I popped this hose off. I filled it up into here until the reservoir was full to the full line. Capped off the reservoir. If your radiator wasn't empty, you could just fill from here until it's at the full line. Obviously in my situation flushing it, the radiator was empty. So I filled it through there. This filled up, capped this off, opened that, fill through there until the water won't go down. Turn the car on, let it come up to operating temp. Once that thermostat opens, that should go down. And right now it's gonna let out any air bubbles that's in the system. So that's kind of what it's doing right now. So we're gonna see what's up. Hopefully everything's all right. So I had the crossover with the funnel full of water. Car came up to operating temps. It bubbled out some air as much as it could. It went down as much as it could. Once it got up to operating temps and started kind of leveling out around like 184, 185, I had the car running for a good almost 20 minutes. I went and shut it off, and that water in that funnel went down. I topped it off right there, closed that off. I put some anti-seize on there because those things are sometimes a pain to get out. Right now it's just distilled water in the system. I may or may not go a little bit over what the issue is. If I figure out what the issue is in this video, I may or may not make another video about it. I'm not sure, but you at least got the point of how to burp these systems. I'm gonna try my best to figure out what's wrong with it. Even if I don't go over it in too much detail, I'll definitely let you guys know what the issue was. There's not too many quality videos on what to do with these cars, and sometimes situations happen to some that don't really happen often to others, so it's nice to have someone figure it out and explain it. So I will get back to you guys as soon as I can. I need to let this car cool down. I'm probably going to call it a day and mess with this tomorrow after work. So as I last mentioned, I stopped using the vacuum fill kit. It is extremely convenient, I have to give it that. And I went ahead and filled the system the old school way. I showed you guys how I did that. And so pretty much where I was at was I have no idea why the system's not holding vacuum. You can see the hoses are in decent condition. There's no signs of coolant in the oil. There's no white smoke coming out of the exhaust. The vehicle's not overheating. I've never had issues in the past. It just won't hold vacuum for some reason. On day-to-day operation, vehicles are made to keep pressure, right? It's under pressure. So the cooling system is made to be under pressure, and with that being the case, the best way to test for any of these types of issues, leaks or anything like that, is with a pressure testing kit. So I rented this coolant pressure testing kit. I'll make another video and I'll link it in the description on how to use that kit if you guys ever want to do that. If you have an AutoZone local, they loan tools for free. You just put a deposit and you get it all back. But it's real simple. I pumped 16 psi of pressure into this reservoir and it held for well over 10 minutes. So the fact that it held for more than 5 minutes, I'm all good with that. I'm not going to worry about why it wasn't holding vacuum. I did a little bit of looking up on that, and there is a bunch of forums of people talking about how their cooling systems hold pressure but not vacuum. I'm not too worried about that. This thing's made to hold pressure, not vacuum, so I'm not going to stress on that. I'm going to continue on with the flushes. When I'm done and it's all coming out clear, I'll add in the coolant, and then as I have been trying to show you the progress, I'm going to go ahead and show you where it's at and how much clearer the coolant has gotten from where it started. So I'm going to go ahead and do all that, and then I'll get back to you. All right, y'all, so I went through the remainder of the flushes that I was willing to do, and this is where I'm at. That's 9 rounds of flushing. I mean, this thing clearly had some buildup, and with the color of that, like, I'm convinced that some of this buildup came from possibly the old owner mixing green and gold coolant. There's a lot of people who will say you can mix it. No, you can't. They both have 2 totally different ingredients for a reason. There's additives in the gold one, so if it was meant to be mixed, they wouldn't make 2 different coolants. I mean, it's as simple as that. So that one right there was the very first drain, and you can see it came out a little dirtier because when I put the 2 gallons of distilled water in, I also threw in some cleaner, and it progressively got clearer. After about the 5th one, I put in some more cleaner from Presto, and you can tell it got cleaner and cleaner. Yeah, the 9th one looks a little bit dirtier than the 8th one and the 7th one, perhaps. It's more fresh. Everything's kind of in there. The sediment that has come out, yes, I said sediment, has settled at the bottom of these gallons. So it's definitely much cleaner. I wasn't about to go through 20 more gallons of distilled water and this process that takes some time, that many more times. So I went ahead and filled 2 gallons of straight coolant in there, and then topped it off until it was full with just a little bit more water. I've driven the car for a couple days. I'm gonna go ahead and test the coolant just to make sure it's I have a little coolant tester. I bought this for like $4 at AutoZone, Walmart, whatever. What it does is pretty much tells you if you have a 50-50 mixture or what. It's really easy to use, real simple, whatnot. So go ahead and get one of those if you need to test that kind of stuff. But yeah, this is it, guys. I've gone and burped the system. I'm not having any issues with overheating or anything like that. Everything's running just fine. The coolant's holding. There's no leaks anywhere, nothing like that. It held pressure like I told you when I tested it. So everything's all good. Anyway, everything's all good. I think in a year, so what I mean is I think sometime next year, I'll probably get the cooler thermostat. And when I do that, I'll drain this coolant out, and I'll probably just go ahead and put some more fresh stuff in, or I'll do another like short flush, you know, because obviously this isn't as clean as it can get, but it's gotten a lot cleaner. I mean, you could see that. So maybe sometime next year when I put in the better thermostat, I'll go ahead and do another flush. But for now, this is it, guys. If there's any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section. If there's any suggestions, throw those down in the comments as well. As always, like this video. Feel free to subscribe. Peace.